Howdy, y'all. This isn't a fact of the day, but I hope it kind of feels like one. We are going to do an incredibly compressed crash course version of Mohandas K. Gandhi's life story. And I'm actually super disappointed that we don't get to do this one in class. Remember how we acted out Nelson Mandela's entire life with me grabbing kids out of the class to perform the various parts? Well, I was kinda hoping to do the same thing with Gandhi. But when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. And when life gives me a global pandemic, I make hopefully entertaining learning videos. We'll start at the beginning. Gandhi was born in British India. Based on that name, you might imagine that British India was a small, especially British part of India. But no, at that time the British basically controlled pretty much all of India, which, spoilers, is going to be very important to this story. So, Gandhi was here in India until the age of 18 when he moved to London in the United Kingdom to go to college and become a lawyer. After becoming a lawyer, you might think he'd have chosen to move back to India and work as a lawyer there, or maybe he really liked London and decided to stay. Nope, he took a third option and moved to South Africa. We've already studied South Africa, and when we looked at its super racist apartheid system, you may remember that one of the four racial categories that system used was Indian, because there were a great many people of Indian descent living there. Gandhi took a job as a lawyer and almost immediately began to experience the racism shown to people of Indian descent. He was physically thrown off of a train because he refused to get out of the seat he had paid for. He got kicked into a gutter for walking near a white person's house and got shoved into the street for walking on a sidewalk because, Indian people weren't allowed on certain sidewalks. This led him to become a leader in the fight against racism and injustice in South Africa, and he was such a successful leader that he was invited back to India to become a leader in India's fight for independence from Great Britain. So, let's talk about his methods. Gandhi is world famous for his non-violent way of protesting. He called his method satyagraha, which means truth force. Those that wanted to follow him had to pledge that they would always struggle using non-violent methods, no matter what opposition they faced. He taught his followers that you should always fight against injustice, but you always accept the consequences of your actions. Gandhi himself was arrested for peaceful protests and thrown in jail many times. He and his fellow protesters would be beaten by the police and soldiers over and over, but never once did they return violence for violence. He believed that it took more courage to continue to fight back peacefully, even if your opponent was prepared to hurt you. Although Gandhi was Hindu himself, when developing his methods of nonviolent protest, he was influenced by many religious figures, including Mahavira, the person who started the religion Jainism, and also Jesus Christ's teachings about turning the other cheek. He was also influenced by thinkers and philosophers from around the world, including the Russian author Tolstoy and the American philosopher Thoreau. A very quick personal story. I still remember exactly where I was and what I was doing when I first read Thoreau's On Civil Disobedience and learned the story of how Thoreau allowed himself to be sent to jail in protest of slavery and the Mexican-American War, and it forever changed the way I look at what it means to fight against injustice. Other world leaders of the fight against injustice were influenced by Gandhi's methods, including a guy named Martin Luther King Jr., whom you might have heard of at some point. Now, the British didn't take Gandhi all that seriously to begin with, but then he began to hit them where it really hurt, right in the money they were making. You see, the British had all sorts of laws in place to help them make money, And believe it or not, one of the big ones was based on salt. People need salt to live, especially in India's climate, and the British taxed salt heavily, plus made it illegal to make your own. Gandhi led tens of thousands of people on a march down to the seaside to peacefully break the salt laws by making salt from seawater. The British promptly threw Gandhi in jail, but Gandhi's example spread, and by the end of the month, the British had been forced to arrest more than 60,000 people for breaking the same law. Once he got out of jail, Gandhi went on finding new ways of making peaceful protests against British rule and hurting them right in the wallet. People in India were expected to buy the clothes made in British factories, so Gandhi called on all Indians, rich or poor, to make their own clothes and set the example himself by devoting at least an hour each day to spinning his own yarn and making his own clothes. In the end, the work done by Gandhi and others paid off, and India succeeded in its struggle for independence without a single battle being fought. That's pretty amazing. For the work he did, Gandhi has often been called the father of the nation, and people in India often refer to him as Bapuji, or honored father. India's struggles did not end with its independence, however. Most people in India were either Hindu, which was the majority, or Muslim, which was a very large minority. Conflict between the two religious groups led to what's called the Partition of India, where the country was divided into two parts. The area with a Muslim majority in the west and east became Pakistan, while the Hindu majority areas continued on as India. Eventually, the eastern section of Pakistan would separate itself and become the country of Bangladesh. Hey, I think I did a Fact of the Day video about that. While the division was happening, violence broke out between Hindus and Muslims. Once again, Gandhi started peaceful demonstrations protesting the violence, and also Gandhi, who was in his 70s at this point, went on a hunger strike, refusing to eat until the violence stopped. Gandhi was so beloved by so many people that the leaders of the Muslim and Hindu factions agreed to try and stop the fighting. 12 days after he started to eat again, Gandhi was on his way to address a prayer meeting that was open to members of any religion, where everyone would pray together for an end to violence. And he was shot and killed by a Hindu man who believed that Gandhi was trying too hard to get along with the Indian Muslims. The picture you see is a monument built on the very spot where he was assassinated, and the white footprints on the path leading to it are on the final path he walked on this earth. Man, I really wish we could talk about Gandhi in class, because this is a topic I'd love to hear and answer your questions on. Maybe we'll see another Mr. Murray Answers Your Questions video sometime. But for now, I will say, good luck on completing the Life of Gandhi document with the information from this video. Please contact me with any questions. And please, stay safe and stay healthy.